Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work, and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, Robin. How's it going?
It is great. You know, the sun is shining, and that always helps everything, right?
Yeah. Yes, you love when that sun's shining. I can always tell when it's a cloudy day when I'm talking to you.
Yeah, it is true.
I've been looking forward to this conversation all week. I'm super excited. I have nothing but respect for our guest expert today. I'm excited to introduce, as many probably know who he is, Dr. Patrick McGrath. I've had the fortune of learning from him and working with him for some time. He is currently the Chief Clinical Officer at NOCD, which, as he can kind of touch on a little bit, is just a huge organization that's making a huge impact in the world of OCD. And he also has done a ton with other organizations. He's an author. He helped start the Foglia Family Foundation Residential Center for AMITA. He was the director at AMITA for many years, starting OCD programming, as well as at many other hospitals. Many have his book, and I know many patients have commented to me the OCD Answer Book and Don't Try Harder, Try Different books have made a huge impact in their life. So I am super excited, Dr. McGrath, that you are here with us today.
Hi, Gay. How are you both? So good to chat with former colleagues at the Alexian Brothers system. Good to be with you both here today.
Geez, we spent some time there. I was young when I started there. I don't know. I spent a good chunk of time there.
Yeah,
I was 16 years, I think I was there. So.
Yeah, I was, 12, and then I came back for another 2 or 3. So, yeah. Jackie, you think you're the longest of the 3 of us.
I am the longest of the 3 of us. I think I actually worked in every single department in that hospital at some time.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Were you back there in the kitchen?
Yeah, she was a great custodian. She was wonderful.
I did spend a lot of time in the bathroom in the lunchroom there, Patrick, as you know.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. You did.
I'll never forget the time I was wearing my head mic, my little lapel mic, and I was doing a presentation with you and kept it on in the bathroom, and you so kindly shared that.
We got to hear Jackie flush and all sorts of great things. That was
fun.
Wonderful.
That was fun.
Yeah.
But I like this topic today, and this is a topic we get a lot of questions from parents on, is pre-pandemic, post OCD and anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. And you're kind of the guru in this department. Can you just share what it is and just a little bit about your take on it?
Sure. So let's start with OCD, right? It's really 2 things. It's intrusive thoughts, images, or urges that people experience, and they find them to be very disturbing, maybe inappropriate, and they feel like they must neutralize them, because if they don't, what if that thing were to come true, or it had certain meaning or something of that nature? So they do a compulsion, which can be a mental or behavioral act. And when you do that, it feels as if it somehow neutralizes the experience, that now that thing will not happen because you've done the compulsion. And that feels great. And it's almost a feedback loop, because of as good as it feels when you do the compulsion, the next time that obsession pops back into your head, you do the compulsion again, and you do it again. And it's like a hamster wheel of hell. After a while, you're just going around and around and around and around. Now, everybody in the world experiences intrusive thoughts. So I just want to make that very clear. We all have intrusive thoughts or images or urges. That's just a human experience. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem in OCD is it goes beyond the pops in your head and you're like, whatever, and you just move along from it. You start to read into it as actually having some kind of meaning or truth, or really it's associated with 2 words, which to me really define anxiety better than anything else. And those 2 words are what if, followed by whatever worst case scenario you can possibly think of. And of course, once you've thought that worst case scenario and believe that you may have some way to influence that thing happening or not happening, why wouldn't you just do something to make sure that it doesn't happen? And again, that's where the compulsion really comes in. And there's a reward then on that compulsion with the relief that you get. And so you can see why people would be drawn to do more and more compulsions. Now, the pandemic, let's talk a little bit about that. There's a few things that have happened with the pandemic. Number one, because of the introduction of teletherapy that we now have, and teletherapy it has been a boom to being able to reach out to people who could never get therapy before or who did not live near a big city. Because let's face it, the vast majority of people who specialize in things like OCD have been located in major city areas. So people who lived in rural communities would have had to drive hours to potentially get to a therapist for a 1-hour session and then drive hours back home again. And it became either time prohibitive or potentially cost prohibitive with gas and the amount of time for therapy. And so the introduction of teletherapy has been a boon to people to be able to get the help that they need that they were never able to get before. So it may appear to people that there's more OCD or things that are going on, but I think that the reality of it is that due to the way the pandemic happened for all of us and the flood of teletherapy that we experienced and the outreach that we've had to people, people are now recognizing I have the access to experts in the palm of my hand with my phone. And so now I can actually get the help that I need and not have to hide it anymore.
Well, and I think that's been awesome. You know, I've noticed even since the pandemic, there's been more and more just even friends I know or clients I know or families that they're loving to work from home. They also have OCD and anxiety and they feel safer working at home. What do you think about that?
There's a pro and a con to everything, right? So one pro is maybe I am more productive work-wise, but one con is I've isolated myself more too. And in the long term, that might actually work against me. For somebody, say, who has social anxiety, the working from home could be a boon to them of what they're doing productive wise, but it's a negative for them in the ability to be exposed to any kind of social situation and learn how to handle those things. So we always have to recognize that with anything that's good, there might be some downsides to things as well.
Yeah. Patrick or Dr. McGrath?
Oh, Patrick's fine. Please don't you. We've all known each other way too long to be calling each other by titles. So
I'm just curious, what are some of the common obsessions you see in children?
Well, there's a couple of them. I mean, of course, you will see some kids who have some fears of contamination, right? And that's really, I see more in the adolescent area.
Okay.
And I'm just going to throw out, we're going to have to talk about some taboo-y things here. So can I just give a little trigger warning here, first of all, that we will bring up some topics here just so everybody knows, because OCD does not care about what the topic is, right? And so we have to talk about it openly and honestly. When you're in adolescence, if let's say you're a boy and you have one of those dreams at night where it's a wet dream and you wake up and you take a shower, but then you go to school and you sit down and you think, oh my gosh, did I shower well enough? And what if one of those sperm is still on me and it crawls through my underwear and through my pants and on a chair, and then a girl sits there and it crawls through her skirt, through her panties, up into her vagina, and then crawls all the way up, finds an egg, she's pregnant, now I'm a dad and we didn't even have sex. And what does that say about me as a person? That I didn't do what I needed to do to clean myself well enough and I got somebody pregnant. Now, to some people listening, that may be like, that sounds crazy, right? How could anybody think that? But remember this, OCD takes a look at something that we have to really pay attention to, and that is possibility equals probability. And even though somebody with OCD will say, in reality, I recognize that's not the way anybody can get pregnant, you follow that with, but what if? And then you just add whatever you want after that. And then OCD says, oh, well, since there's a but what if, then maybe we better prepare for that just in the off chance that that thing could occur. Yeah. Now, with kids, even younger than that, you might see things that are kind of taboo, thoughts about something bad happening to themselves or to their parents dying or something of that nature. So you'll see kids who are doing potential rituals to try to keep everybody safe in the family and believing that if they don't do that, then something bad will happen. You can see some of this even starting potentially as like superstitious types of behaviors, but then over time building from superstition to more ritualistic kind of components that people do. And it just takes hearing one story or having one intrusive thought that really triggers you, right? Again, everybody has them, but sometimes one of them just really sticks a little bit more than others do. and we start thinking more about it, and we have to do something to get rid of it or neutralize it. You even see kids who go through really extreme good night rituals. Good night, Mom. I love you. Good night, Dad. I love you. Don't let the bed bugs bite. I love you. That kind of thing. They have to keep doing these things over and over. And if they get it wrong anywhere along the way, they have to start it over again because it has to be done in just right in a certain order. And if you don't, something bad could happen. It could be my fault. So as long as we do this, nothing bad will happen. And guess what? Every night that we do this ritual, we all wake up in the morning. Everybody's alive. Nobody's hurt. This ritual must be the thing that's helping. Right. And so therefore we have to keep doing.
Well, do you find that a lot of times for the patients that have OCD, is there trauma involved? Is there something that you think triggered it, or is it more genetic? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's all of the above, right? There are some people who have gone through a difficult situation, and OCD says, because OCD is an opportunistic jerk, right? So OCD says, oh, you've been through a bad situation. I've got the cure to make sure that never happens again. Do compulsions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep reminding you of all the bad things that can happen. You're going to do compulsions. The compulsions are going to prevent bad things from happening, and all of us will be great. Everything will be fine. No one else will be hurt again. Right? Then you've got the genetic piece where, you've got a 2% chance of just having OCD. If you have a first-degree relative who has OCD, you've got a 20% chance of having OCD. If you have an identical twin who has OCD, you've got about a 60 to 70% chance of having OCD. So there is a genetic link that's going on there, but it's not pure one-to-one, right? So we talk about this in the literature, we say diathesis stress. But what does that really mean? We have stressors that happen in lives, and we have genetic predispositions toward things. I may have a high genetic predisposition toward something, but never have a stressor that really kicks it off. I may have a low genetic predisposition to something, but have a massive stressor that actually kicks it off. And everybody else is going to be somewhere in between. So there seems to be, for some people, just the right time, the right place, the right sweet spot for something to happen to trigger the OCD. But then you've got other people who might go through that same experience and not be triggered because they may not have the same genetic potential predisposition toward it.
Okay. What are some signs for parents to be watching out for if the child is struggling with OCD or anxiety? I had parents to say, we have to do these certain things. Yeah. But then when we kind of lean into it more and I get more of that information, it doesn't seem like it's that compulsion behavior because it's not that ritual. It doesn't happen consistently. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you would suggest to our listeners to seek help, and what does that look like?
I think there's two areas. First of all, we always have to watch out for safety behaviors. So do you notice your child is avoiding things more and more? And it could be very certain things, if that's like OCD, or it could be social situations, if that's a social anxiety disorder. If they've, say, had a panic attack and they don't ever want to go back to a place where they've had a panic attack again, that makes sense. That works for a lot of people to feel safe. It's not good for people in the long term. If there's a phobic reaction, so I don't get on elevators or escalators or those types of things. We see these things happen in kids. So number one, really pay attention to what your children are avoiding. Number two, when do they seek reassurance? And is there a rise in reassurance around certain topics? That's another cue, right? That reassurance seeking. And this is where we have to just sidetrack for a second to talk about family accommodation, because it is so very important for families to recognize that the things that they do to try to make their kids feel good can also, unfortunately, be the things that maintain anxiety and stress and actually allow for OCD to grow and foster. So I never fault families for giving accommodations because they think they're doing the best thing that's possible. But it's important to educate families that sometimes the best thing you can do is not give reassurance and not help people avoid things, but actually have them face their fears and do the stuff that they do. I always give this story. My mom was the first behaviorist I ever knew. I threw up every day of first grade. I was a really anxious kid. And the best thing she ever did was not coming and taking me home. She made me stay at school every day. And that was the best choice to have made. But I wonder how many other parents would have just gone and picked up their kid because they felt bad that their kid was anxious, right? And brought them home. And then what that would have unfortunately done for most kids is led them to have a greater chance of staying home and refusing school and doing those types of things. That third safety behavior is distraction. So if you find that your kids are distracting themselves, they're on the phone, they're on the tablet all the time in situations where other kids are not doing that, maybe that's a way for them to get through the experience so that they don't have to face the discomfort. And I don't care how young your children are, we have to talk about substance use, right? Because kids younger and younger are learning that substances are out there. It's getting easier and easier to do things like vaping marijuana and that type of stuff. Other states are legalizing it. It's becoming more of just part of the culture. You're seeing billboards all over the place. Kids younger and younger are able to get a hold of substances and using them as ways to get through situations, to calm their mind down, to stop that constant thought process or images or urges that are going through their head. And then just recognize where compulsions come in too. Do kids make excuses to do things? Do you have a kid who's always at night walking around the house and you find them, what are you doing? And you can see them checking every window because they're making sure all of them are locked because they feel responsible that if they don't check them and someone breaks in, it's their fault because they should have checked that. Are they checking the faucets to make sure the water's off so that the house doesn't flood? Are they going and checking the stove to be sure that it's off so that nothing burns down? Kids can take on a lot of responsibility feelings, and that might be one way that you see it happening in children as well too. So watch those safety behaviors and pay attention, especially for any therapists who are listening too. Really pay attention to how much family accommodation is going on in any situation.
Well, and I know, Patrick, I often use that family accommodation scale with families.
Yes, it's wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so they have one I know for anxiety and OCD, and that can be helpful because I think so often, and we've talked about this before, families, parents, they feel sorry for their children when they're struggling. So they take away the expectations. And what it actually does is it makes the condition worse, right?
Correct.
Child can't handle this. My child can't handle that. They have to wash their hands 20 times. So we have to be late to work and school every day, where we've talked about having those expectations of being on time and there being some kind of privilege or a consequence if they're not meeting that expectation, even if they have OCD.
Yeah. I'm glad you said the word can't, Jackie, because, the three of us know my position on the word can't. Can't has nothing to do with anxiety. It's will you do it or won't you do it, not can you do it or can't you do it? Because if you can't do it, there's nothing I can do for you. Can't means that you don't have the ability to do something. And if you don't have the ability to do something, I don't have the ability to give you abilities. You either have them or you don't. I can help hone abilities and things like that. So quick story. I had someone come in my office one time and said, I can't get on an elevator. And I said, well, interesting. You walked through the doorway to get into my office and you did walk. So the two things you need to do to get onto an elevator are walking and walking through doorways. Let's go to the elevator. And we went to the elevator. I pressed the button, the door opened. I said, I want to watch you bounce off the invisible force field that has appeared in front of the elevator. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, again, you did walk into my office and you walked through doorways. Those are the two things you need to do to get onto an elevator. You've proven that you have the ability to do what you need to do to get onto an elevator, but you've told me that you can't do it, which I can only infer means a force field is blocking you. So I think it'd be fun to watch you bounce off the force field. And then they look at me and they say, okay, I hate you, number one. But two, you're right. I get it. I get what you're saying. I don't want to get on the elevator because I'm afraid of elevators. And then I say, great, I can treat that. That I am really, really good at. I can help you do those types of things. But what I don't know how to do is help you do something that you can't do.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And I think that's one that parents need to hear because so often I hear, my child can't do this. They can't handle this. They can't handle that. And a lot of the children and teens we work with, they actually do better when they're in structure and routine, like school.
Yes.
But when they're home, they really have a hard time. Are there any suggestions that you have for parents to support their kids, whether it's school or home?
If you're going to be home, school creation at home has to happen, right? You have to have a school day at home then. You got to be up at a certain time, say by 8 o'clock, you've got to be sitting at the dining room table. And for the next 6 or 7 hours, all you do is schoolwork. There's no TV on. There's no sitting in your pajamas. There's no extra special lunch or anything like that. If you're too sick to go to school, then we'll mimic school at home. And that's what's going to occur. And that's the way it is. And if it means that I have to take every one of your electronics, put them in the trunk of the car and drive them somewhere else and put them in storage or bring them to grandma's or whatever it is, that's what I'm going to have to do, because what you want to do is make home amazingly boring and suddenly make school seem like a more exciting place. Now, let's say you're at school. Well, hey, it's still better to be in an office maybe than it is to be at home. So we could start there. And then we could build from going in the office just there to one class and then 2 classes and then 3 classes and gradually just keep building up the process. We don't have to flood someone and just make it an all or nothing thing, but we have to constantly be moving toward a goal. One of the things that I do not like is the way that we do accommodations in school right now when we have a lot of these plans that are going on, because once they're done, they seem to be set in stone, and that's just the way that it is. And what I want for any plan in school is, all right, here's where we're starting, but here's where we want to end. So if you're going to get this accommodation now, we're going to try to wean off of that accommodation by such and such a date, because we want you doing the things that everybody else is doing, so that when you do finish school and you're out there in the world, which frankly doesn't give a ton of accommodations to people, you're going to be able to fit in really well. Because unfortunately, for a lot of people, there's a rude awakening when they finish out of school and they go to get a job and they say, well, I used to be able to do this, and I know that everyone else does this task within 15 minutes. I'll need 45. Guess what? You're going to get fired if that's the case, right? So you want to get people to get to a point where they don't need the accommodations, but I have no problem starting with them and building to a plan that helps you wean off of them.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point. And Robin probably knows too, some of the teenagers I've seen recently, they have a lot of these obsessive thoughts. One that's come up recently a lot that I've been seeing with some of my teenagers is, what if I'm gay? They obsess over, having thoughts about a certain sex or something like that. Have you seen that a lot too?
Yeah. So sexual orientation OCD is very common, right? Not a topic, unfortunately, that people associate with OCD, though. Many people think OCD is just cleaning things or putting things in a certain order or kind of a personality quirk. But sexual orientation OCD is, here's what I identify as, but what if I'm not that identity? Now, let me stress here really quick. This is not a dislike of any other identity or anything of that nature. So I want to put that out there, that this is just a, what if tomorrow I'm suddenly something that I haven't identified at? No one will know who I am anymore, right? No one will understand me. Have I lived a life that's been a lie up to this point in time, and I didn't even know that I was doing it? That kind of thing. This is different than people who are actually struggling or questioning or feeling desires about certain things. These are people who are wondering, what if I were to feel desires about same or opposite gender, whatever it might be? And I just want to say this too. It's not just kids who identify as straight fearing they're going to be gay. It's people who are gay worrying, what if I'm straight? And people who are bisexual wondering, what if I'm not bisexual? So it covers the whole gamut of identity here in these situations.
It's the what if.
It's the what if. That's you, Robin, you can't say that enough, right? It is the what if that we're talking about. So when we're treating people, we're treating them to deal with the uncertainty, the doubt. OCD's nickname is the doubting disorder. And OCD says you must find certainty in this situation. Only when you have 100% guaranteed certainty are everything going to be okay. Well, here's the problem. How many of us have 100% certainty about anything going on in our life? I don't have certainty that after this interview, when I walk downstairs, I could fall down the stairs, break my neck, and die. It is a possibility, right? So should I not walk downstairs anymore? Because how can I deal with the fact that I might die the next time I walk down the stairs? Or should I walk down the stairs? Well, I'm going to walk down the stairs is what I'm going to do, even though I don't have a guarantee that it's going to be safe.
Did you see a spike, the pandemic, with the anxiety?
It's interesting. So people thought with the pandemic, OCD would go through the roof. Here's what I found. People who did not have contamination-based OCD did not care about the pandemic because they were so much still concerned about their own obsessions that they didn't care about the pandemic. They were still focused on their obsessions and compulsions. And people who did have contamination were like, wow, everyone else in the world is starting to act like me now.
What I noticed, Patrick, was when they had to return to work, where it really kind of spiked. I think staying at home was great for a lot of people, right? I mean, whether you had a child that maybe was like a school avoider, or, you had somebody with OCD and anxiety, and then all of a sudden you're told you have to stay home for a certain amount of time. They were like, great, this is wonderful. But I think the transitioning back out of that was probably a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a child and you're noticing, I have a child that flickers the lights, 3 times before they leave, or they don't walk on the lines, or they, do certain things repetitively. When should parents start to be concerned?
When you would ask somebody not to do that, or what would it be like to not do that, and you can see the discomfort that they experience with that, that's when it's time, right? Get it while it's young. Get it while it's new. Don't let OCD just really entrench itself in, if at all possible, but start dealing with it as soon as you possibly can. Because the longer it's there and the more that it becomes an ingrained pattern, the harder it is to get rid of. So you really do want to make sure that you intervene as quickly as you possibly can. There is absolutely no harm in bringing someone in if you've noticed something going on, and at least talking to someone about it to see, even if it's just to keep it on a radar. I have people I've done just a few, quick sessions with, and we've been able to come up with a couple of just, here's some easy behavioral exercises to do, who've not needed to see me again. And they're like, wow, that was great. Thanks. Now we know if this happens in the future in any other area, this is the way we're going to approach it, and this is what we're going to do. It can be that fast when it's young, but it can be a lot more difficult as you get older if it's really ingrained.
Can you tell us and our listeners a little bit about what treatment would look like, maybe ERP, any of those?
So the kind of therapy that we do is something called exposure and response prevention. And there's two components to it, but one is really key. The exposure piece happens in all of our lives. We're always exposed to things that are uncomfortable. So in the therapy, we're going to purposely expose people to things that are uncomfortable. What are we going to do once we've exposed someone to it? We got two choices. We do the compulsion if we have OCD, or we do response prevention, which is the opposite of the compulsion. We don't give in to the compulsion. We do something totally different, or we allow ourselves to be in discomfort and learn that we can handle the discomfort, right? And so response prevention is really the key component in any kind of treatment, where we're stopping that instantaneous gratification that we experience when we do some kind of safety behavior or coping strategy. And we allow ourselves to learn, I can handle being uncomfortable. I can handle uncertainty. I can handle not knowing right away how things are going to go. And I can handle being in this anxious situation and allow it to pass on its own without having to do something to make it go away. And once we learn that, then it doesn't matter what pops into our head. So, Jackie, Robin, let's do a quick exercise. And I'm going to ask all of our lovely listeners to do the same as well, too. I would like all of us to stare at the ceiling above us for the next 10 seconds and wish for it to collapse on us and crush us all to death. All right. So if everybody would just stare at your ceiling for the next 10 seconds and wish for that to happen, let's see what occurs. Go. Jackie, Robin, are you still there? Are we good?
We're still there.
Still there. Okay. Both of you are still there. Excellent. So what did we learn there? We learned that our thoughts don't make things happen. But someone with OCD would not want to test that. Someone with OCD who had a fear that the ceiling could collapse might touch the ceiling just to make sure it doesn't feel spongy. And when they touch it and it doesn't, that gives them confirmation that it's not going to collapse. And then they go to walk out of the room, but they go, but what if this spot's spongy? So then they got to touch that spot in the ceiling, right? And they just do this over and over again. And they don't learn that they can handle the intrusive thought that the ceiling could collapse, because let's all face it, it could. It is a possibility, right? But the likelihood is so low. Is it worth spending all that time checking? Or can we all just live with knowing that, yeah, there's a chance of it, but I can handle it? And that's how we do therapy. That's what we want people to do, is to recognize, I don't need to go and do what my brain's telling me to do to get that instantaneous relief right now. I can handle that discomfort and I can just live with that and I can move on with my life without having to give in to what the OCD wants me to do.
Typically, if you go to treatment and let's say they're working with the therapist, do you find that the parents are involved? Do you keep the parents
involved? I think it's
involved?
essential, really, because so many times, as I said earlier, parents are involved in giving those accommodations. So not only is it doing the ERP with the kid, but it's also helping families to be able to become comfortable with their child being uncomfortable. How many parents have said, well, you know what? I have one goal in life, and that's to make sure that my child is as comfortable as possible. And I think that's not a great goal, right? Because kids learn from mistakes. Kids learn from failures. Kids were going to fall off their bicycles once in a while, and then they're going to have to get back up and do it again. I mean, imagine if your goal was your child would be 100% comfortable all the time, and your child's riding a bike and then they fall and they say, well, Mom, let's sell the bicycle because I fell off of it and I got hurt. And therefore, I don't ever want to fall off the bike again and get hurt again. So we can get rid of the bicycle because I'm never going to ride a bicycle again because now I've learned bicycles can be uncomfortable.
Well, right? And I think that's an excellent point. And the last thing I guess I would just say is many of the families that I work with, many of the parents also have anxiety or OCD when I'm treating the child. And so sometimes, I ask about that in the first session. And sometimes we do some parallel treatment or we do some kind of at least education for both, parents and child. Do you find that too?
Yeah. I mean, there are those genetic links, right? So it wouldn't be uncommon to have multiple members of a family who are experiencing various forms of anxiety. And the family might all be feeding off of each other. And all accommodating each other just to make the household be less stressful.
Right. Because I had a child that, was engaging in a ritual, and every time the child even came close to engaging, the parent would say, "Oh my God, you're doing it, get all anxious and react." And then the child got more anxious. And then, and a lot of times Robin and I talk parenting book and on here about how just parental anxiety can kind of make the situation worse at times. So I love how you include both in the treatment.
Yeah, you have to. You have to, because parents are going to be uncomfortable watching their children be uncomfortable. And it's a natural instinct to try to do something to comfort your kid. But sometimes the best thing you can do is not comfort your kid and allow them to get through the experience on their own and learn that they can handle it. That's key.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think this is a great place for us to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being a part of our talk today. We do have 3 questions for you.
Oh, I'm excited.
These are 3 questions we ask every guest. You can choose to answer 1, you can do 2, or you can do all 3. It's up to you.
All right.
The first one is, tell us a funny parenting story. Now, this could be, from your own childhood, something your parents did that's quite comical, because we laugh often about our parenting and what happens in there. Number 2 is, what TV, family, or movie would you want to be a part of and why? And then number 3, what does successful parenting mean to you?
Gotcha.
1,
all right.
2, or all 3?
I'll start with a great parenting experience. And I witnessed this with one of my best friends and his daughter and his wife. So it was her birthday party, and it was one of those parties where they had the games set up in all the parts of the clubhouse they were at or something like that. And so she's playing the games and she wasn't winning every game, and she started crying and screaming that it was her birthday, and so she was supposed to win every game. And her mom took her outside and had her stand at the window and watch all of the other kids continue to play games, and said, "We're going to stand here and watch these children have fun, because that's what I wanted for your birthday, was for everyone to have fun. And if you can't have fun the way everyone else is having fun, then you're not going to be a part of your own birthday party." And after about 5 minutes, she said, "Okay, Mom, I'm ready to go play with everyone." And I remember going up and I hugged her. I said, "That is some of the best parenting I've ever seen in my life right there. I am impressed as hell right now that you just did that with your kid. That was amazing." So that was really, really cool. What was the next one? Movie?
Yeah, TV or family or a movie.
Well, my favorite movie is Caddyshack, so I think that would be hysterical, because I love golf, but I love slapstick humor as well, too. So if I could live Caddyshack, I could do both of those. That would be amazing.
Always a good time, Patrick. Always a good time. I'm excited that you came on today, and I know everybody's going to learn a lot, and I'm excited to hopefully catch up with you and work with you in the future.
Sounds awesome. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Bye, Jackie.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.